punishment is an effective deterrent. Society has always used punishment to discourage potential criminals from unlawful action. By making an example of convicted, disingenuous felons, it shows that we are not afraid to do what must be done. Because the United States has the utmost interest in preventing murder, treason, terrorism, and other horrible crimes, it should use the strongest punishment available, and that is the death penalty. It is human instinct to protect one's life at all costs. And if there is even a small chance of changing the minds of criminals, shouldn't we take it? If delinquents know that their lives are on the line, it gives them a cause to rethink their actions. Making corporal punishment legal in all states would be a coup. When felons are sentenced to death and executed, would-be lawbreakers will think twice before killing for fear of losing their own lives.
Okay, 44 seconds. Rebuttal.
Well, actually, per source B, a criminal said the opposite. Governor Cuomo in New York was against the death penalty, so a murderer was in jail for 15 years, and then Governor Cuomo got voted out, and the new governor sent the criminal to Oklahoma, and he got killed. And before he died, he said, "Tell Governor Cuomo, dying is much better than staying in jail." So, if a criminal says that he'd rather die than have lifelong imprisonment, then maybe it's not the best crime deterrent.
The fact is, most criminals, before carrying out their terrible crimes, don't care about their lives to begin with.
And you bring up human instinct? It's human instinct to eat the person next to you if you have no food and you're hungry. These savage points you're making just show how weak and poor your point is.
Okay, 53 seconds. Point 3, Con.
Racism. We all know the word, but do we really grasp its significance in our judicial system? Because studies have shown that there is indeed a racial bias in our courts, which means there is a racial bias in our nation's death penalty. The government has tried to surreptitiously sneak this fact by the American people, but evidence shows that this ruse cannot be allowed to continue. For example, in source 4, it states that African Americans make up 42% of all the inmates on death row. If there was no racial bias, this would not be possible, seeing as African Americans only make up 12% of the entire US population. If that wasn't enough evidence, of the last 18 people executed in New York State, 13 were African American, 1 was Hispanic. Only 3 of the 18 were white. Does anyone here know who else used the death penalty? Anyone? Well, I'll tell you. Hitler. That's right, one of the most famous racists in history. This is a man who killed anyone he wanted by saying they were criminals and they deserved to die. A man whose stratagem was to use capital punishment to achieve his own selfish goals. Do we really want to feed into the same kind of hate by letting someone be executed just because we say they should, just because of their race? There's still racism in America, ladies and gentlemen, and if we continue to allow capital punishment, there will always be a chance that a death penalty could have been given because of a racial bias.
1 minute, 35 seconds. Rebuttal.
Okay, so the crime stats by race are 39% white, 19% Hispanic, and 40% black, and this is by the Bureau of Justice Statistics. So,
And then for death penalty, it's 34.5% black, 55.6% white. Proportionately, more white people are being sentenced to death and executed since 1976 than black people. So, are you talking about racism against like white people? Also, you brought up Adolf Hitler and how he killed people. That was very wrong. They killed millions of people. So what are we going to do with the Nazis who perpetuated these crimes? Are we going to let them live? Interestingly, the Nuremberg executions made my lock screen really quick. Here are all the Nazis that were executed after the war. Hans Frank, Wilhelm Frick, Alfred Jodl, Ernest Krenberger, Wilhelm, the list goes on and on. And last but not least, Aiden, you said it's human nature to eat the person sitting next to you. I would highly disagree. We want to know someone who did eat the person. Albert Fish, extreme killer, child molester, murderer, and cannibal. He ate the kids. Should we let him live? No, he was executed, rightfully so.
1 minute, exactly. Point 4, Pro.
When a life or multiple lives are taken, balance of justice is disturbed in our country. Unless this balance is restored, society succumbs to a rule of violence. When the most heinous crimes are committed, offenders deserve the worst punishment under our system of law. This punishment is the penalty of death. Any lesser punishment for these crimes would undermine the value that our society places on the protection of the lives of our people. Casey Carmel explains this simply in an astute statement that reads, "The point of the death penalty, however, is not to see how much pain can be unleashed on the murderer, but to bring him to justice." It's from source 6. When a criminal executes a cruel and heinous crime, his punishment should not be under the idea of an eye for an eye. If it were that straightforward, then those who have had their families and friends murdered would then have the right to murder the killer and even the killer's loved ones, which is not right. This is not justice, this is anarchy. Justice would be the criminal being executed and set to justice under a penalty of death. But justice is also not sentencing a murderer to life in prison. Life in prison is not enough in these cases. It does not punish anyone under justice. In this case, the victims of the murdered family member do not get their justice and never will. They will continue to live the rest of their lives knowing that the murder of somebody they loved is safe in prison for the rest of their life. Nobody wins here. Justice has not been served, and the families continue to grieve over their loved ones. In 1991, a young mother was tied down and brutally forced to watch her child be executed in front of her. The mother of the child was then viciously mutilated and left to die. This incident was left clandestine for years until the brute was sentenced to life in prison. The killer of this woman and her child should not be living in prison. Given 3 meals a day, clean sheets, cable TV, family visits, and endless appeals. For justice to prevail, some killers must be sentenced to death. The death penalty is a force that not only brings justice to the families of those who have been murdered, it also brings justice to our country and our system of law and order.
Thank you, Ross. Rebuttal?
It has been proven and supported by criminals' views that lifelong imprisonment is a worse penalty than the death penalty. They waste away their life in prison, and then they still end up dying in the end. So,
You said that it would be anarchy to kill one's whole family if they killed many people, but if they killed one person, you're still killing them, and that's still eye for an eye, and how is that not anarchy?
25 seconds. Point 4, Khan.
The death penalty is a corrupt form of legal justice and definitely should not be allowed. Many people feel as if a criminal took the life of someone, then the criminal's life should be taken as well. However, if a criminal takes the time to commit the crime, he or she is not thinking about going on death row. The death penalty is inconsequential and is definitely not going to teach other criminals the lesson that actions definitely do have consequences. According to Source 4, quote, 67% of U.S. police chiefs do not believe that the death penalty significantly reduces the numbers of murders. The death penalty is very strict on criminals, but the other criminals in the United States will not learn from it. Death is a very extreme punishment for any criminal regardless of their actions. There are many criminals in our country that do not have a very superficial understanding of this. Criminals need to come to the understanding that if they murder someone, for example, then they need to pay the consequences. These criminals should spend their time sitting in a jail and let the guilt sink in for what they have done instead of just taking the death penalty and not taking the time to realize what they have done. This way, other criminals in the U.S. might come to the realization that going against the law will result in some major consequences and that there is no point in having a strict death penalty.
1 minute, 11 seconds. Rebuttal.
Okay, so your point is inconsequential. And going back to what you said previously, of course prisoners are going to say that it's worse to serve life in prison than die. Of course they're going to say that. If they say that it's worse to die, then they're going to be killed. They don't want that. They're going to be like, oh yeah, it's going to be terrible if I spent 50 years in prison with 3 meals a day, nice warm sheets. And then going back to this, if you murder one person, we're not necessarily saying you should get the death penalty. However, if you murder 100 people, why should you be allowed to live? Did the person feel guilt after they killed 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, 20 people, 50 people?
And you also said that prisoners will let their actions sink in and they'll think about what they've done. That's pretty much just sending a kid to time out when they're little, and grown people don't do that. And also jailing doesn't do anything to correct their actions, and it's just shown through the stat that 70% of prisoners return within 5 years for the same crime in prison, and almost all of these including murderers.
Okay.